What if humanity's first great civilization didn't just emerge? It changed who we are forever. Deep beneath the scorching sands of Mesopotamia lies a story long thought to be myth. It's the tale of a people who domesticated rivers, harnessed the land, and looked to the sky to tell time. They built cities long before the pyramids and wrote their laws while Europe was still sleeping in the Stone Age. Today, we take a journey through the millennia to the origins of civilization, to the Sumerians. Their achievements are astounding, and their poisoning remains a mystery. Who were they? Where did they come from? And why did they disappear? For nearly 5 millennia, the scorching sands of Iraq have preserved the traces of the Sumerians, pioneers of the world's earliest known civilization. Our modern world owes much to them. They invented writing and the wheel, divided time into seconds and minutes, and tamed nature to build vast cities. They developed art, nurtured culture, and laid the foundations for organized trade with caravans crossing harsh deserts. Their stories are reflected in ancient legends. They chronicle the early history of humanity. But about 4,000 years ago, this thriving civilization mysteriously disappeared. For centuries, their legacy lay buried, largely forgotten. Today, the desert is finally giving up its secrets to archaeologists. Southern Iraq, with its scorching dunes and rarely softening sun, has changed little in thousands of years. Yet it was once home to a thriving civilization. Between the Mediterranean Sea and the Persian Gulf lies the land that the historian Polybius called Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, now modern Iraq. In the mid-1800s, knowledge of the ancient East came mostly from biblical texts. But then French and British expeditions made astonishing discoveries. An unexpected past emerged from the soil. Mesopotamia was the cradle of civilization. But why here? And what made these discoveries so remarkable? Over the past 150 years, we have slowly uncovered a complex world, rich in social diversity, innovation, and complexity that has challenged the belief that civilization began with Greece. The Syro-Mesopotamian civilization flourished in the fertile areas fed by the Tigris and Euphrates. These rivers were not only sources of life, but also important trade arteries. However, Mesopotamia lacked basic resources, timber, stone, or ore, making rivers indispensable for connecting economic zones. Our journey begins in the mountains of Armenia, where twin rivers rise. Fed by melting snow, they carve through the slopes, bringing with them nutrient-rich silt. For more than 2,000 kilometers, they flow side by side before merging with the Shatt al-Arab. As they descend into the plains, their currents calm, leaving fertile soil on their way to the Persian Gulf. But these rivers could be both benevolent and destructive, with spring floods devastating the land. How did humanity tame such a volatile landscape? The search leads to Baghdad, along the Tigris. Here, among bustling markets and winding streets, modern life echoes ancient traditions. In shaded arcades, fruits like pomegranates and traditional yogurt, staples since Sumerian times, still abound. Clay jars of water dot the street corners, an age-old method of keeping water cool through evaporation. A 5,000-year-old Sumerian invention. Who were the Sumerians, and where did they come from? The mystery began to unravel in Anatolia, where archaeologists have found clues in the fertile plains of eastern Turkey. Here grows the wild wheat called spelt that sustained the first humans. Rich in biodiversity, this region has hosted humans since time immemorial. Nomadic tribes living off the land eventually settled down. Kurdish families still preserve ancient customs by baking traditional wheat bread, sashiyek megi, for their households. In 1958, the remains of a 9,000-year-old village were discovered, a settlement that predates Sumer. These early settlers built with stone and earth long before pottery was invented. One day they made a discovery that would shape human history. Wild grains could be collected and stored. Unlike meat, they could be stored for weeks or even months. This changed everything. People began to settle to protect their food supplies. Agriculture did not begin by chance, but through human curiosity and observation. These early farmers improved tools, refined methods, and laid the foundation for writing. Crops became the cornerstone of Sumerian wealth. One alabaster vase, more than a meter tall, reflects their reverence for nature and the divine. It depicts crops, livestock, and worshippers honoring the goddess Inanna. As agriculture developed, so did the population. Communities expanded along rivers into the vast plains of Mesopotamia. Farmers sought better crop yields. One clay tablet shows a cedar cart that distributed seeds evenly, a wonder of its time. The Sumerians learned to control the environment. They built dams, reservoirs, and canals, inventing the wheel in the process. Irrigation was their greatest achievement, turning arid lands into fertile fields. Twice a year they harvested wheat, millet, and barley. Endless palm groves flourished along the canals. Fishing villages sprang up in the southern swamps where the rivers met. Even today, their building methods have survived. Huts built of layered earth and woven reeds. In the ancient harbor of Ur, 40,000 people lived as fishermen and farmers, sailing in elegant reed boats. They made bricks, baked them, and bound them with bitumen, building cities that have stood the test of time. Ur had a population of 34,000 people, 5,000 years ago, when the West was still in the Stone Age. The Mesopotamians didn't just build cities, they rebuilt their world, harnessing nature to survive. The ziggurat of Ur, made of kiln-baked bricks, took 1,500 workers 5 years to complete just its foundation. Situated 20 kilometers from the fields, the towering structure symbolized the god's earthly domain. Drawings by early 20th century archaeologist Leonard Woolley help us imagine the splendor of Ur. The city was surrounded by fields and traded as far as the Arabian Peninsula. His temple was the heart of political and economic life. Inside the city walls, houses jostled for space in chaotic clusters. There was no sewer system. Refuse was burned or left in the streets. 3-story houses stood next to single-story dwellings, their facades sealed to keep out dust and heat. Life in Ur was a mystery until Woolley's excavations. In 1926, he discovered the tomb of Queen Puabi, filled with treasures and the remains of her retinue sacrificed for the afterlife. Among the finds was the Standard of Ur, a decorated panel depicting everyday Sumerian life. Scenes of war and peace shimmer in lapis lazuli and shell inlays. We see chariots, soldiers, scribes, snapshots of the ancient world. The desert today holds traces of that world. Ancient dams lie miles from rivers, baffling early archaeologists. Nippur, deep in the desert, hid the ruins of temples. A clay map revealed the secret. Rivers were rerouted to feed the cities. The landscape of Mesopotamia has changed, but satellite images allow us to trace the ancient paths of water and life. Cities like Nippur, Uruk, Ur, and Girsu once stood where rivers once met, their glory preserved in stone and history. Houses were small, just 70 square meters. Markets buzzed as merchants called to the crowds. The Sumerians enjoyed beer, music, and lively debate. Their vulnerability to nature gave them a deep sense of the fragility of life. On the streets of Ur, people wore sheepskin tunics, kanakas, and adorned themselves with jewelry. Even the poor could afford fake jewelry. Scribes, craftsmen, and slaves lived near the temples. The ruins of Ur are a treasure trove for archaeologists, a window into the soul of humanity's first great civilization. The customs of the Sumerians and the skill of their craftsmen are revealed through the treasures found in their tombs. Their goldsmiths perfected the techniques of hammering and soldering gold with astonishing precision. One stunning example is the ceremonial harp, its bull's head looking into eternity with lapis lazuli eyes, decorated with a mosaic of shells and precious stones. When queens and their maids departed on their final journey beside their sovereign, they were crowned with golden diadems, bands of gold and bright stones intertwined with woven beech leaves. At the back of the head, above the face, rose 3 golden flowers, symbols of beauty and respect. Ur's prosperity is reflected in the luxurious materials used for ceremonial objects: gold and silver, lapis lazuli and turquoise, mother of pearl, and shells from the distant islands of Bahrain. To gather such rare materials, the Sumerians developed long-distance trade routes that stretched across the ancient world. One of their most astonishing feats was the journey to Badakhshan, in what is now northern Pakistan, more than 3,000 kilometers away, where caravans mined the deep blue lapis lazuli that so captivated the Sumerians. In the markets of Peshawar, near Afghanistan, the stone still glows underwater with the same hypnotic intensity that inspired the ancient craftsmen. It was the Sumerians, as early as 3500 BCE, who began organizing these vast networks of trade, long before the Silk Road came into being. Trade led to innovation. To record transactions and guarantee agreements, the Sumerians invented the concept of a contract. They engraved cylinder seals with intricate bas-reliefs that they rolled into clay tablets to record ownership or the terms of a transaction. These impressions served as signatures and evidence. Their reverence for law soon followed, laws to protect, to guide, to govern. Few legal texts survive from this early period, but a major discovery changed everything. In the early 20th century, archaeologists discovered the Code of Hammurabi, a relic taken as war booty by the Elamites in the 12th century BCE in Susa, Iran. Commissioned by Hammurabi, king of Babylon, in 1694 BCE, the massive stone stele recorded 282 articles of Sumerian and Babylonian law. Most dealt with everyday life, trade, marriage, inheritance. The king saw himself as a judge and guardian, protecting the vulnerable and overseeing public works. Among the laws was one that would echo through the centuries, Article 196. If a man puts out the eye of another, his eye shall also be put out. The Sumerians, in their quest for prosperity, scoured the land for what their homeland lacked, including timber, a resource lacking in the deserts of Mesopotamia. To get it, they traveled north to Syria, Anatolia, and as far as the cedar-rich mountains of Lebanon. Today, the once vast cedar forests have been reduced to remnants. These ancient trees, some more than 4,000 years old, likely witnessed the rise of Sumer itself. Temple reliefs depict Sumerian lumberjacks felling enormous cedars, loading them onto boats and floating them down the Euphrates, epic expeditions that could last for months. Even today, echoes of Sumerian ingenuity remain. In the small town of Hit on the Euphrates, 600 kilometers from the ancient cities, bitumen still bubbles from the ground, accompanied by sulfur fumes. This black, carbon-rich substance was used by the Sumerians for waterproofing, from sealing boats to coating bricks and foundations. Before working with it, workers would coat their hands in sand, a technique that has remained unchanged for thousands of years. Archaeologists believe the Sumerians collected the bitumen as it floated downstream, preserving it for building and for protection against the floods that regularly threatened their world. After 3 millennia of power and influence, Sumer began to die. It was not a fall from a sword. It was a slow decline, like a lamp burning out without oil. The fields were becoming salty from 1,000 years of irrigation, and harvests were dwindling. The climate was becoming drier, and the cities were becoming more vulnerable. Iron, discovered by other peoples, became the new key to power. But the Sumerians had no deposits of their own. They lagged behind, losing influence. Their art in the 3rd millennium BC shone with diversity and depth, but in the 1st millennium it became formulaic and conventional. Freedom of expression disappeared. Scribes recorded the decline of the harvest, especially wheat, which fell by 40%. Only barley still bore fruit, but it soon gave in to the onslaught of salt. A whitish crust sterilized the land, cracking in the sun. Former oases turned into deserts, and cities died along with the land. In 2004 BC, Sumer ceased to exist as a political force. Its place was taken by the Assyrians and Babylonians. But the ideas created by the Sumerians, writing, calendar, court, geometry, architecture, did not disappear. They passed on to other peoples. Through Anatolia to the Greeks, through Greece to the Romans, through them to the entire Mediterranean. Sumer is gone, but not forgotten. Its spirit lives on in the words we write with, in the numbers we measure time with, in the laws by which we still judge. Their shadows are in every brick, in every idea we have inherited. Or maybe the Sumerians never disappeared. Maybe they are us, the descendants of those who once dared to face the elements and build the first city on Earth. Thank you for your views. Like and subscribe to my channel. Good luck.